In the States, far more than here, the first 100 days of a new administration is a very big deal. And tonight, Donald Trump is marking his wildly turbulent, hyperactive 100 days with a rally in Michigan. I wonder what he'll say about Canada. And indeed about the collapse in confidence in the US economy, which is down for the fifth month in a row to the lowest level of confidence since the pandemic, with a lot of anxiety, particularly over the impact of tariffs. On which note, the White House press secretary today attacked Amazon for listing the cost of Trump tariffs on its products. This, said the giant company, was never going to happen. But Caroline Leavitt called it a hostile and political act. If Jeff Bezos was ever a friend of the Trump White House, he certainly isn't one now. Let's talk to Simon Marks, LBC's man in Washington. Simon, great to have you there. It's a difficult first 100-day celebration for Donald Trump, not just the Canadian vote, but also the opinion polls and the lack of confidence in the economy.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the way that Donald Trump is going to see it, Andrew, and we'll be hearing from him, as you know, tonight when he addresses that rally in Michigan, of course, one of the battleground states where he swept the board and secured the keys that have returned him to the Oval Office for the last 100 days. This, we are told, is going to be a speech celebrating 100 days of achievement. And what the White House claims and what Donald Trump will insist is that he has absolutely been the action man of modern-day American politics. He will argue that countries all over the world, including the UK, particularly China and other nations, have been beating a path to Washington, D.C., as he put it last week so eloquently, kissing his ass in a bid to secure an agreement to see the United States reduce some of the tariffs that are in place against them. He's going to argue that through more than 100 executive actions that he's taken over the last 100 days in office, he has put America back on the path to recovery, despite the fact that the stock markets are clearly still facing a battering. Economic confidence here has been sharply impacted by concerns that the United States is hurtling towards a recession. So there's going to be a clash in this speech between reality and the pretense that Donald Trump continues to try and promulgate whenever we hear from him.
And putting Donald Trump's ass elegantly to one side for a moment is going to be particularly interesting in Michigan because, as you say, a great victory for him in the election, but also one of the states most impacted by tariffs and one of the states which trades most, I understand, with Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. And he will argue, as he has done relentlessly, that there's a blip here. He's transitioning the economy away from the addiction that he claims Joe Biden had to public expenditure to an era in which he says manufacturing is going to be restored and renewed. Michigan, of course, the home of the auto industry, but also so heavily reliant on incoming products from Canada, including power, energy, electricity, which at one point the Premier of Ontario threatened to cut to the United States before Donald Trump backed down on at least one aspect of his trade war. So he's hoping to find the Republican Party faithful there. And at a time when Donald Trump's opinion poll numbers are sagging substantially, one poll over the weekend showing that his approval rating is down to 41%, the White House still believes that he is delivering on many of the core promises that he made to his supporters, not just in terms of restoring American manufacturing, which in reality is going to take years if it ever actually happens, but also, of course, with the mass deportations, which remain a hallmark of his policy and also a hallmark of his determination flagrantly to ignore court orders and provoke a standoff with the judiciary, leading to so many fears here that in the last 100 days, checks and balances that are in place on presidential power have to all intents and purposes melted away.
Well, talking about checks and balances, Simon, what do you make of his latest comments in an interview with The Atlantic about the possibility of running for a third term? He acknowledged it'd be very, very difficult and it would be very constitutionally controversial, but he didn't say no.
No, and indeed in previous interviews, of course, he's indicated that there are paths that he could look at that might allow him to circumvent that constitutional ban on a third term in power. One idea that's been floated here is that in the next presidential election, J.D. Vance or someone else, another cipher, might be the official presidential candidate. Donald Trump would be the vice presidential candidate. And then, lo and behold, after winning the election and being sworn in, the president would resign and step aside. So Donald Trump could return for a third term in office.
And would the Supreme Court accept that? I mean, I think most people here think that it's too cute by half. Yeah, I think that that is really a stretch. But there's no question that the ambition is there, either for Donald Trump to serve a third term in office. And, let's be honest, by the time 2028 rolls around, who can guess at this point what the state of America's electoral democracy will be in? But if it's not Donald Trump, it could be, I don't know, Donald Trump Jr. Yeah. And let me ask you, not about Donald Trump Jr., but about another person who has been very, very prominent in the White House until recently and seems to be leaving almost, which is Elon Musk. Because Musk has gone back, we're told, pulled back from DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, with all those cuts, and spending his time much more on Tesla. Is that happening?
Well, I mean, he says it's happening. He says that he's going to be returning to the day job at Tesla, which, of course, has suffered dreadful financial consequences of his involvement with the Trump administration. Its profits for the first quarter down 71%. Elon Musk has shed $100 billion of his net worth since joining the Trump administration. He says he's going back to Tesla most of the time, but will still continue to work for Trump 1 to 2 days a week at the Department of Government Efficiency, which, of course, is not a Department of Government Efficiency. And by the way, Andrew, it's not even a model of efficiency. 100 days ago, Elon Musk told the American public that he was projecting to save them $2 trillion in public expenditure by the end of this year. He now concedes that DOGE, after all of that activity, which did consign hundreds of thousands of federal government workers to unemployment, all of that activity has fallen $1.8 trillion short.
Wow. Let's look at. There's so much to talk about, but I'm just going to keep on rolling at the moment because 100 days is 100 days. Do you think it's fair, despite everything we've been talking about, to say that the core Trump base remains solidly behind him? They're waiting for the economy to turn up. They're a bit worried about tariffs, but they are still basically got his back.
Yeah, I think there's no question that there has been movement in the public away from Donald Trump, but not necessarily movement in the public by his core supporters away from Donald Trump. They are still prepared in interviews and in polls to be willing to give him more time and still to believe in the message that he has been selling. Now, the Democrats, if you remember them, they certainly hope that by the time the midterm elections roll around in November of next year, they will be able to reverse Republican control in the House of Representatives and possibly also in the Senate. But, the problem is that many voters are also recoiling from the leadership of the Democratic Party. Democratic Party lawmakers in Congress have an even lower approval rating with the public than Donald Trump has in the White House. And they've got to find a way of reimagining the Democratic Party if they're ever going to be able to stop this Make America Great Again movement in its tracks.
Well, if they're waiting for a saviour, then they can look north to Canada, where, after all, the Canadian Liberals were in terrible, terrible trouble under Trudeau. He left, in came Carney, and tonight the rest is history. How do you think Donald Trump is going to deal with Carney and deal with the, frankly, slap across the chops he's had from the Canadian voter?
Well, the first thing to say is that he won't accept that it's a slap across the chops, because he will argue he bailed on Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader who lost his own seat in the Canadian House of Commons last night several weeks ago. Indeed, it almost seemed a few days ago that Donald Trump was poised to endorse Mark Carney. Didn't quite go that far, but certainly distance himself completely from the Conservative Party campaign. So Donald Trump even then was positioning himself. I think the real question that he has to confront is, given the national mood in Canada is now so hostile towards him and to his argument, a joke when it was first raised on November the 29th of last year in a conversation with then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about Canada becoming America's 51st state. So resolutely have Canadians rejected that. Is he really going to continue pursuing down that path? Mark Carney, as you know, and as you've reported, has been very outspoken today about withstanding American plans to try and annex Canada. And he now comes to the task with this mandate, with this majority to sit down opposite Donald Trump, which, of course, Justin Trudeau at the time really didn't have. So it's going to make a big difference in the bilateral relationship. But Trump is Trump, and he wants Canada to be America's 51st state, and he may not walk away from that rhetoric.
Simon, I think not for the first time you have a fascinating speech to observe later on today. Thank you so much for talking to me.